Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Azzakye here. I'm going to bring to you another lore reading, but this for the season of Paragon. I'm going to hit it off with the challenges. Bah! There we go. Alrighty. So we got week 1, Kingdom of Light. If you step into a tavern and hear someone complain about the wine and food, and then start boasting about their hometowns, then you have most likely come across a Phalosian. Phalosian. The people of Valios, that's annoying, have in the past defeated the Huger, Saint Roman, and Wieland. Well, I am terrible at names. I'm butchering them like crazy. Their great king, Gorbit the Fourth. Their great king, Gorbit IV, wrought 17 years of glorious peace. The people of Valios lived happily for 17 years. Their vast lands were covered in golden fields of wheat, and their cities expanded far and wide. The Phalosians believed that it is the glory of their ancestors that has brought beauty to the land. Throughout the course of the nation's history, glory is what the Phalosians value the highest in the Kingdom of Light. Week 2. Oh, my thing's in the way. That's really upsetting. Let me just shift this for a second. Hello? Oh, they're all... Yeah, okay, that's why. They're all locked here. It cuts out the cinematic. There's no perfect spot, but let's read along. Week 2, Land of Plenty. The rich lands of Lothian stretched far and wide, with its central and northern parts being made up of mainly plainland. Mount Triumph makes up the core of the foothills in the west, while Serpent Ridge and the Jura Mountains make up the mountainous areas in the south. The Tutatis, the Tutatis River ushers forth from the Lionheart Lakes in the east, coiling its way to the Baltic Straits, its later parts running through the Cormand Mountains, an area home to the seafaring merchants known as the Cormands. Great. The Cormand Mountains and the Cormands. Great. Lion River is another important river that flows north from Lionheart Lake until it runs out into the Whale Road. Tells us a little bit of geography. Not that I could place it on a map or anything. I'm pretty sure someone familiar with France probably could guess what kind of layout it is. Week 3, a war rekindled. The Tutatis River flows westward to the Baltic Strait, beyond what is the Kingdom of Wirland. Having signed a peace treaty with Celtland in the north of Wieland, the King of Wieland, Edmund I, it should be the first, Edmund I, turned his eyes upon the prosperous Valios. Having had a taste of maritime, Edmund I wanted to claim the entire strait for himself, leaving nothing for the people of Valios, and so he continued to bolster his forces before finally sending them to Wessel? I think that's supposed to say wrestle. Hmm. Wrestle control of the straits. His army ushered forth and continued onwards onto Valios soil. However, the I say Wheelish? Is it supposed to be Welsh? Oh crap! Have I been seeing Wieland as supposed to be like? No, no, no. Welsh is spelled Welsh. That Wheelish. Okay, so I'm gonna go with Wheelish. Walish. See, we. I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be Wheelish. Wheelish forces could be Welsh. Could be Welsh forces. I know we could be Wayland. Could be Wayland. Ah man, now I'm unsure. Wayland, Welsh, Wheelish, Wheelish. Ah man, I think I'll go with Wheelish since I've already screwed up like 100 times before. The Wheelish forces were too powerful, and the people of Valios were forced to relinquish their port of the Tutatis River, they're ending their thus ending their 17-year-long peace. Week 4. Suffering defeats. One after another, Valios lost their coastal villages, then towns, and finally even their important cities along the Tutatis River. The forces of Wieland began plundering the riches of this kingdom of light. Yet the people of Valios did nothing, at least until news reached the Arelica, 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 Relica, 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 or Relica. I'm gonna go with Aurelica. Sounds more fluid that way. The city of Light and Balios' second largest city was surrounded and under siege. The people feeling turned from doubt to panic, and finally to anger. A name gradually overshadowed the other voices. King Gorbit. Gorbit who once brought them countless victories and glory. Why? Why did he ignore his motherland and let her wail? All right. Then week 5. Prophecy of Light. Rumors began spreading like wildfire. Rumors about a sacred maiden. Monks had found a mural from the days of Lionheart in a in a monastery at the outskirts of Eretica that predicted the Wheelish, the Wheelish invasion and the siege of Arelica. The final piece of the mural depicted a saint called upon by the light who would lead the people of Valios and defend against the siege. That a sacred maiden would appear upon the plains to rescue the people. I don't make saying that it's sacred kind of just devalues the importance. Well, not devalues. It's kind of a trope. So like when you place too much importance on the character, yeah, you have to immediately think that the maiden is holy in some way. It would have been much better if it was if they made it out. Well, I mean, like a storytelling point of view, but just it would have been much better if they just said maiden, like an ordinary maiden. But I mean, like it's basically a prophecy anyway. So saying a sacred maiden is not terrible, but like when reading it like this, having the importance placed on sacred all the time is exhausting. Was that 6? That was 5. So we're on to 6 now. Week 6. The maiden appears. The people of Parise, 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 Parise were in fervor. Parise, I think it's Parise, were in fervor, and the people of other regions began organizing forces to rescue their kin. The cry of the people had finally forced Gorbat's hand. He was amassing his army with the goal of breaking the siege of Arelica. Two princes fought a nightly contest to decide which would command the forces. Yeah, of course you'd fucking have two princes fight amongst each other just to command forces. Things took an unexpected turn. The Iris Knight in his white armor and silver helmet used marvelous tactics to turn the tide of the war. As he took off his helmet, the cries of victory instead turned into cheer for Saint None? No. Man, they should have just used Joan. This is annoying. No. Ah! I don't know how to say that, alright? Known? God damn it, man. Do I go with known? That sounds so weird. Known. Turned into cheers for Saint Known. The king announced to the high court that he was summoning Saint Known to the palace. Like, Joan's just a name, and you're already taking from history. Just go with like. If you're not gonna use Joan, just use a different name of a saint. Then, not like people. It's not like you're gonna get in trouble for using. It's not like you're gonna get in trouble for retelling the story of Joan of Arc. Week 7. The Maidens advance. Just as the people expected, Known was to lead the army towards the front line. Not long after reaching Arelica, they launched a surprise attack on the Welsh. On the Wheelish. Welsh? Wheelish. On on the Wheelish. I said I would go with Wheelish, but I keep saying Welsh. It's in my mind now. As they were busy erecting encampments. Known charged at the vanguard, a banner held high. As they crushed their foes, the originally frightened recruits were inspired by the banner to fight beyond their skill, and even veteran soldiers fought harder even ever. Ah! And even veteran soldiers fought harder than ever. Their forces rescued a group of captured nuns during the battle, nuns who had been expelled from their academy as they wanted to use medicine and alchemy to heal those wounded by war. They excel in healing, and many of the previously wounded soldiers hailed them as saints. Yeah, that was week 7. Week 8, the Wailing Bridge. The Wheelish forces occupied a castle at the other side of the Tutatis River. In order to besiege Arelica, they set up cannons with which to bombard the city walls. Those defending the city naturally wished to stop their cannon fire, but the Wheelish knew of their intentions, and an arduous battle ensued. But during the height of the crisis, Known led the army and caught the Wheelish unprepared. While the city was safe from the time being, the crisis wasn't over. The Wheelish forces could arrive at any moment, and having been sieged for several months, the city of Arelica was unable to provide for its forces. The city's people were short on food and clothing, and most soldiers had different degrees of wounds. The next battle would surely lead to a tragic end if there were no reinforcements. Week 9. Battle at the Plains. Known and her forces fought that. Man, I am making a lot of mistakes today. Known and her forces fought tirelessly. to the best of their abilities. She had sent a call for aid, but no reinforcements had arrived. Instead, the Wheelish forces were already poised to strike. Cries of death and slaughter echoed in the deep of night. As the battle raged on, the Wheelish forces rushed towards Velios cannons, and the end of the battle was all but decided. But that when the king's noble cavalry arrived. Like a hurricane, they swept through the enemy forces. The Wheelish quickly lost control of the battle, and their forces scattered in the wind. The Velocian raised high their banners and launched a final counterattack. Week 10. False Peace. While the peace had lasted for 17 years, the mighty Phalios would allow no challenge to their power. They quickly beat back the Wheelish forces on the other side of the straits, defending their city of light. Yet the war broke cracks. The war-born cracks that began spreading in the darkness. An unresolved conflict sparked between the people, nobility, and the elderly king. The sun will eventually set in the kingdom of light, but will its afterglow be fiery or cold? And that is the lore reading for the week's challenges. Undo move to the head of it. Alrighty. I think may as well, since I did it before. So we have Great Ambitions. So this is the campaign, a little bit tidbit. This doesn't really, I don't think this relates too much to what's happened in the background story, but let's see. Warring lords battle one another, and a new generation shall be born under the axe head. The realm is in chaos. Rising in flames. The realm is in chaos. Any ambitious man striving for domination must have someone to rely on and must expand their land. The burning lands. History is written by the victor. Any land trodden upon by the army's steel-clad hooves belongs to the king. Ode to the chaos. The people gaze upon the royal authority amidst endless conflict. The supreme glory. A true warlord is not content with the mere corner of the land, while many lords throw coveting glances towards the royal capital. Only one may sit atop the throne. Alrighty, so realistically, I think I've realized this before. The campaign doesn't really have anything much to do with the background lore of the season. But with that being said, let's have a read at some of these. These unit lore pieces that you get from finishing the unit challenges when you unlock them. Alchemist 1. The Wheelish army is getting closer. I've heard they've set up camp right across the river. Go fill up the lamps. 3 ounces should do it. And remember to pull down the shaders or headmistress Morrigain? Believe that's supposed to say like Morgan. But it's spelt weirdly, so I have to say it weirdly. I feel like I have to say it weirdly. Morgraine? I'm gonna say Morgraine, and that sounds like a guy. Or Headmistress Morgraine will flog us. Chelsea, I think it's that else. Chelsea, do you think Chelsea, do you think our soldiers will be able to stop them? It has been ages since the king last issued a command. The soldiers are low in spirit. After you've filled up the lamps, you'll come with me to help with the healing, and be sharp about it. Will they destroy our academy? They say they brought plenty of trebuchets. Enough, Louise. Is the Holy Maiden true? Is the Holy Maiden true? Louise! Chelsea barked in a low murmur. I barked in a low murmur. So it'll be like, Louise! Be something like that. She's emphasizing her name, but she's doing it with trying to keep her voice down. She quickly scanned the area outside the dormitory, then went to close the wooden door. You ought to know that Headmistress Morgan doesn't want us talking about this. But what? Are you saying you're going to join the war, stand toe to toe against the Wheelish? Chelsea's eyebrows twitched. Don't be silly. All we can do is pray that the King forces will prevail. Louise lowered her head dejectedly. She knew that Chelsea was right. The Wheelish army had crossed the straits with their archers and bombards. The legend said that Valios was invincible. The legend had been wrong. Oh, so wrong. The Wheelish bombards had crushed the once solid walls into dust and smoke. Their longbowmen had turned the glorious Valosian knights into... I should say Valos knights. The glorious Valos knights into uh, veritable hedgehogs. Veritable hedgehogs. Before anyone had even known they were there. Kind of makes me want to have these Wheelish longbowmen if they're putting so much emphasis on them. When are we going to get a Phalosian season? I want my tier 5 longbowman, but I also want a complete range overhaul. They shoot too fast. Honestly, they just shoot too fast. But hedgehog before anyone had even known they were there. But we are, after all, Phalosians. Sadness and terror painted Louis's face. What if they do break the city? What will happen to us then? And what of Balonostra? Balonostra? That's not for us to worry about, Louise. Chelsea embraced Louise. Okay, they put exclamation marks as if it was spoken, but it's not. Chelsea embraced Louise in a tight hug and began patting her comfortably. There's always a way. We must trust the headmistress. And that's number 1 of The Alchemist. Then we get to have a little chat between Chelsea and Louise. Talking about the siege of Arelica. Alchemist 2. The free healing sessions which St. Norland's Academy holds once per month attracts plenty of Balonostra. What? Alright, I'm confused now. So the Alchemist here in Balonostra. So, take that back. They're not in Arelica, they're in Balonostra. So we have Arelica, and now we have Balonostra. And the St. Nolan's Academy is in Balonostra, so I mean, like, either near it, like, so the St. Nolan's Academy has to be near or in Balonostra, so I'm gonna go with that. While they aren't a real clinic, its students are trained in medicine and herbology, and are better doctors than the average practitioners who tend to resort to bloodletting therapy for every occasion. Man, taking a swipe at people. It is true that many doctors back in the medieval ages adhere to bloodletting practices. A few days ago, the Academy's headmistress ordered her students to set up a healing center in the auditorium and to post a notice about it by the gate. But the morning passed and noon came, and without anyone seeking help. Morgaine sat rigidly by the desk in a corner. Chelsea could almost see her frown through her big hood. The auditorium was silent as a grave, with only a few slim. That makes no sense. Also, 10 pages of this? Jesus! I'm gonna have it's gonna be a long day. It's gonna be a long day. Rays of light penetrating the stone walls, casting shadows hithers and dithers. The students looked. That's. Oh, okay, so that makes more sense. The auditorium was silent as a grave, with only a few rays, with only a few slim rays of light penetrating the stone walls, casting shadows hither and thither. The students looked at one another, yet none dared speak. Hey, Chelsea, listen. Louise moved closer on the bench. What? Chelsea asked, slightly confused. Yeah, please have a question mark here. There was a sort of roaring blast, like thunder striking in the distance, the sound of which slowly rolled through the air. Following the blast, loud shouts and sudden footsteps could be heard on the other side of the door. Open up! This wasn't a light knock or request that was common by their patients. These outsiders were on edge, impatient. Nobody move! Headmistress Morgreen hollered to those who had risen up to open the door. And who might you be? She asked in a deep voice. Defenders of Balonostra, let us in, someone from outside said in a hurry. Yeah, so Balonostra is the city that these alchemists are in, which is very confusing since I believe that the city that was under siege should have been a Relica. What's happening out there? Morgraine asked. The blasted Welsh broke through. Open up. Our men are wounded. A scent of fresh air mixed with blood came rolling inside as the doors opened, and Chelsea's face turned ashen as she gagged. Blood-soaked soldiers of Valos stood there, propping one another up. The leader and his few men entered before they closed the door. Then they toppled a stone statue to bar the entrance. Wow, okay. Quickly, ointment and cloth, and have them lie down on the table, Morgraine roared. Her able students quickly came into action. They smeared the wounds in a few herbal mixtures and bandaged them up. How did they break through? Mistress Morgraine asked the leader in a resolute voice. Bombards. A sea of bombards. They attacked out of nowhere at dawn and crushed the gate before long. They were down before we even had time to react. General Rajiv, sounds like an Indian name here, Rajiv, hit the ground in fury. The blasted Wheelish, I'm sure they're murdering the townspeople as we speak. As if to prove the general's words true, the shouts of Wheelish soldiers and the pleads and cries of the townsmen could be heard from outside. Chelsea backed away without thought and grabbed hold of Louise's arm, dragging her along. Louise recovered from her paralysis and held Chelsea's hand tight, both of them white as ghosts. Don't worry, Louise. Don't be afraid. Chelsea attempted to comfort Louise, though she too was scared stiff. That's confusing because no, wait, yeah, no. Louise is the was the paranoid one. Chelsea was the other one. So yeah, no, that makes sense actually, story-wise. The bombards roared and the cries of the people continued until nightfall. General Rajiv and his men held the door closed. The smell of blood and groans of the wounded soldiers filled the hall. That and the scent of death. Aren't the reinforcements here yet? Louise couldn't help but ask. General Ravage turned to look at the terror-struck girl. He shook his head, but said nothing. The nearest city is Argent. Argent? But I don't think they know that Balonostra has fallen, so all we can do is wait here for the Wheelish to come. Chelsea said, You're a general of Balonostra. You've got to think of something. Of what? Going out there would be certain death. Rajiv sagged listlessly to the floor. You don't know how numerous they are. I sent letters requesting reinforcements of the cities closest to here a few days ago, but they were spotted near Balonostra. When they were spotted near Balonostra, but no one has answered. Why do you think? Either our messengers have been killed. Sorry. General Rajiv voices suddenly rose. Either our messengers have been killed or we've been abandoned. The whole hall suddenly went silent, so we're just waiting to die. The students in the auditorium began to stir. No one knew what the wicked Wheelish would do to them. But judging from the cries of the townspeople, wouldn't be pretty. Which basically makes sense. Which makes no sense. Why would you go? I mean, like, unless you're planning to raise the city. But I'm pretty sure, like, the Wheelish plan to take over Fellows, Valios, so wouldn't make sense to actually burn down, to kill all the citizens and thing. You'd just kill the soldiers at most. But judging from the cries of the townspeople, it wouldn't be pretty. The cries of murder arose Chelsea from her haze. The cries of murder arose Chelsea from her haze. The discussion had no end. Everyone was on edge, but there was nothing that could be done. Having cared for the wounded all day and consoling Louise had tired Chelsea, who went right to sleep in a pile of straw. She awoke to firelight and incessant footsteps, but before she knew what was going on, someone picked her up, dragged her into the center of the auditorium. Once she awoke fully, she noticed that the hall was full of armored, Wheelish soldiers who were shouting in a language she couldn't understand. General Rajiv was kneeling on the ground with a Wheelish soldier holding up their heads. Actually, this wouldn't make sense either if this is England and France, because English is is actually based on um low class France, low class French, and so you got the highborn, like, so you got the highborn, like, you got two you got you got many languages, you got many languages back in those days, but like, so you got the high class French, where like the nobility would speak, and then you've got the peasantry who would speak English. So this actually makes no sense. They would be able to actually understand these guys. I believe the alchemists and the soldiers should be, unless the soldiers are nobles, and that wouldn't make sense. But like, again, also the pride of many noblemen would refuse to speak in English, even if they understood it. So I'm pretty sure something like that would. I think something like that would be more believable. Um, General Rajiv was kneeling on the ground with a Wheelish soldier holding up his head. Blood flowed down across his face. Headmistress Morgraine lay still to one side. The soldiers kept dragging students into the center of the hall. Another group of soldiers went over to the table where the wounded Balosian defenders lay and stabbed each one in the heart. You must heal our wounded, if not, you'll end up just like them. Only then did Chelsea take note of a man in the center, a man clad as a general. He spoke in a strange Velocian accent as he drew his. In a strange Veloc accent. Again, you need to use adjectives. If you can't use a noun to be an adjective, so it's Velocian accent. As he drew his sword and held it to Rajiv's throat. Get it over with. Rajiv glared at him in the eye. Wheelish scum, mark my words, you'll pay for this. The man smiled as he cut Rajiv's throat, blood splattering the wall. Ah! A student shrieked in terror. She tried to rush out of the room. No, Louise! Chelsea's heart caught in her throat, but before she could even say anything, an arrow came out of the darkness and pierced Louise's neck. Louise fell, cradling her neck, blood gushing forth from her throat. She gazed back towards Chelsea and extended a hand. Then the light faded from her eyes. Bah! Filthy low blood, Arthur said coldly as he kicked Louise's corpse. Icy chills ran down the student's spine. They were horror-stricken, all except Chelsea. Chelsea stared at Louise's dead body tears streaming down her cheeks. She opened her mouth, but no wounds came out. But no words came out. No wounds? Why? Okay, so that's actually really weird why... Bah, filthy low blood. That makes no sense. Arthur... I don't know who the hell Arthur is, but... This could imply Arthur is a nobleman. This could imply that Arthur is a nobleman, but it would also make... I'm guessing Arthur's supposed to be a nobleman in this case, so that's why he's probably the one that also killed Rajiv. Course of events. So Alchemist 1 does follow into Alchemist 2. Does Alchemist 3 continue on the story? So Alchemist 3. I need some to come with me to the cellar to get medicine. Headmistress Morgaine told Arthur of Wieland. So, Arthur of Wieland, probably a noble. Medicine already? Arthur frowned. We're not trying something, are we? He flicked his whip and struck Morgaine, who let out a heavy groan. Her forehead suddenly dripping with sweat. This became commonplace once St. Nolan's Academy fell into Willish hands, but if Arthur didn't need them to treat his wounded, it is unlikely a single one of them would still be alive. We used up all the medicine. Morgaine fought the pain as she shook her shackled hands. Shackled? These guys have shackles? Our medicine reserves are in the cellar. Looked at the shackled Philosians and nodded. You two go. You two, go with them. If they try anything, kill them. Two soldiers followed behind Morgaine. Zara, Camille, Zoe, and Chelsea, come with me, Morgaine said in a strained voice. Four shackled women with wounds all over their bodies began rustling forward. They had obviously all tasted the wheelish whips. Only Chelsea did not move. Chelsea! Headmistress Morgaine said again, but Chelsea still did not move. The two soldiers hollered at her impatiently and began dragging her by the hair. She remained expressionless and didn't struggle. She simply let them drag her onwards. Morgaine hurried to help and hugged Chelsea tight. What's the matter, Chelsea? Morgaine asked, her voice filled with worry. Chelsea didn't respond. She looked at Morgaine with despair brimming in her eyes. Night had fallen, and the cellar was covered in darkness, save for a few dimly lit lamps still burning. The two soldiers talked loudly as they guarded the entrance. Chelsea crouched down in the darkness, touching a tiny dagger she had hidden in her shoe. Her gaze fixated on the two soldiers. She still hadn't been able to accept Louise's death. That tiny, kind girl who had always been there with her, taken away from her in a blink of an eye, then thrown away like livestock by this savage Wheelish. What had she done to deserve such a fate? What had the people of Balonostra done? And what about those studying at St. Nolan's Academy? Chelsea had attempted to figure out the reason for war many a time before. She liked to think that it was due to famine or at the whim of a king. But her mind was blank now. The moment Louise died was the moment that her being became filled with seething revenge. Revenge. To kill, to pierce the soldier's heart with a cold, hard blade, and then twist. That was all that was in her mind. Chelsea could hardly contain herself. She wanted to unsheath her blade and pounce at the two guards. A hand grabbed hold of her. Don't be rash. Not until the time is right. Headmistress Morgaine held her arm in an iron grip. Fury burned in Chelsea's eyes. She struggled to get free. Morgaine grew pale and almost fell to the ground. Chelsea, you can't take them on all by yourself. They're wearing armor. Zara had come from the darkness and propped up Morgaine. She said to Chelsea in a low voice, trust us. There's a better way. How, Morgaine? Morgaine brought out a few jars and handed them to her. Drop one at their feet with force. Chelsea took one. Will it do anything? Trust Headmistress Morgaine. Zara nodded fiercely. What are you up to? The two soldiers strode towards them with lamps and swords in hand. Now! Mograine grunted, and the two women hurled their jars at the two soldiers as jars hit the ground. Thick smoke enveloped the soldiers. What's this smoke? Coughed and tried to rush out. The soldiers coughed and tried to rush out from the smoke. The lanterns! Mograine roared at Grace, flung the oil lantern towards the soldiers and the smoke. Boom! Red-hot flames began spreading that clung to the soldiers' armor. They howled in pain and flailed frantically to quench the fire, but to no avail. The fire continued to burn, putting an end to the two soldiers' scream. What do you think of this little invention of mine? The deed's done. Morgraine's face paled somewhat, and she slumped down by the wall, smiling faintly. She removed the hay and planks from the corner of the wall, revealing a tunnel. I don't know where it leads to either. I came upon it not long ago, but it's our only chance. Headmistress Morgraine gestured and stopped Chelsea, who had been about to speak. If you can make it out of the city, head east. You'll find Argent there. What about you, Morgraine? Chelsea asked as her gaze fell upon the blood gushing forth from Morgraine's belly. I don't have much time left. Those bastards don't play nice. Morgraine rose and removed the hay. But you still live. But you can't help me exact revenge. You can't help me exact revenge in death. You can't help me exact revenge in death. Morgraine took out a piece of parchment, handed it to Chelsea. Take this. It contains a few inventions of mine. You'll find them useful. Chelsea took it and wanted to say something, but the sounds of footsteps drew nearer. The Welsh soldiers knew that something was up. Go! Morgraine held the path open and pushed the women inside before covering up the wooden boards once more. Then she toppled over a shelf full of jars. A dense fog began filling the cellar. Time to settle our score, you bastards. Morgraine picked up a burning lamp and listened as the soldiers' footsteps grew nearer and nearer. Come down, come dawn, the Wheelish hung a charred corpse from the top of the Academy's bell tower. They roared at the top of their lungs as if they wanted to instill fear in the insubordinate Velocians. Outside the city walls, Chelsea and the others stood facing the facing the walls of Balonostra. It will be all right, Louise. Morgraine. It will be all right, Louise. Morgraine. It will be all right, Louise. Morgraine. We will return. We will return with the fury of Valos. She drew a cross at her chest and began walking down Oregon. That's interesting. It's interesting because the alchemist makes no not what I was meant to do. It's interesting because it implies that their smoke bombs can be set on fire. Man, that would be so cool. That would actually be so cool. So, what I was thinking, like, maybe not is not true, but if Booming Tech did actually just imply that the smoke bomb actually enhances fire effects, and they actually implemented that in the game, that would be really cool. That would be insane. But I highly doubt that. I'm pretty sure if it did cause like additional fire effects for fire, someone would have figured it out already. But yeah, what's also really confusing is um what's also really confusing is that when I was reading this section here, Maidens Advance. No, not Maidens Advance. Here, it says that the nuns who are expelled from their academy. So it implies that it implies that the academy itself expelled these nuns here, but that's not true because we just read out the alchemist. So the people who they weren't technically expelled, they were, well, I mean, like technically chased out. So yeah, they ran away. Expelled is how it's presented is strange because it presents different ideas. The nuns presented in the week 7 that joined the Maidens Advance are I assume are the nuns from the Academy of Saint Nolan, and I assume that they weren't technically like excommunicated from the Academy. They ran away when the Wheelish invaded. So yeah, this is very confusing. Very confusing indeed. All right, on to the Battleguards now. We still have the Chevaliers as well. So it's going to be a long, long day. The second and the third one of the Alchemist with 10 pages. This one starts off with 3, so let's hope it doesn't expand too much. But these are great stories. I actually love these stories. Unfortunately, it's a little bit inconsistent across. It's a little bit inconsistent across the thing. Well, I think the week challenges presenting very strange ideas, but but finishing the story does explain a couple of things that were very confusing. Balonostra is already fallen, so Balonostra is probably one of the coastland cities that fall. But it's since it has an academy in it, it's probably larger than a town. So I assume Balonostra is a city. So they're heading on to Argon now, and they will appear again in Arelica, which are again different places. So it's just interesting to note the geography. You would think that the Wheelish would then head off to Argon to take Argon, but Arelica seems to be the next place that's under siege, or Arelica is further inland and the Maidens escaped from Argon, or Argon was captured later on. So between there. Vanguard 1. What's this? A dust-covered banner. Who does it belong to? My father. Your father? Ha! So your father was a banner weaver? No, someone else made it. But it belonged to my father. Or more precisely, my father and his men. Honestly, do you know what you're saying? See that symbol? An iris. It's the mark of the royal family of Valosis. Valos. Valosis. Valosis. I know. But it did indeed belong to my father. Right. Whatever you say, I don't care. So where is he? He passed away. Passed away? What happened? He got ill and starved to death. He's buried on a mountain not far from here. So your family was so poor you didn't have enough for food. Well, we did have some, but I hid it away. Where? Out with it. If you must know, but only if you are willing to listen to my story. I've been lying here for ages and haven't had anyone to talk to. Ha. What say you? I just kill. What say you? I just killed you and take it anyway. You could try, but I'm sure you wouldn't find it. Worry not. The story isn't that long. Isn't all that long. Alright, I'll listen to your story. At least half-heartedly. Alright, we're off to a really strange start, so... Oh yeah, there's also these bits. The alchemists are troops of women proficient in the noble art of medicine. They all hail from St. Nolan's Academy in the Phalosian city of Balonostra. Apart from curing the wound, they also use alchemy to aid their allies in achieving victory. Battleguards, a troop mostly comprised of veteran soldiers formed by the Teta, ah, Tet Tutatis River. These war veterans always rush into battle with their banners held high, inspiring those around them to fight for king and country. The will to uh, fight follows in their banner's wake. All right, Battleguard 2. My father was still tilling the fields when the Wheelish crossed the coast in the west, until Uncle Marcel? I'm just gonna go with Marcel, came running from the other end of village, that is. He hollered my father's name as he ran. Dorn! Dorn! The Wheelish have crossed the strait! Straight as in Strait, not straight as in crossed straight. My father looked up at him, then and straightened his back. Uncle Marcel? Yes, Uncle Marcel fought with my father. They both spent many years in the army and fought plenty of wars. They fought until there were no more wars to be had. Which is confusing since there's been 17 years of peace, so it implies that there was a lot of wars, depending on how old this guy is. So the king discarded them like broken toys, and they were left to till the land for a living. Bah, working for the king never ends well. Which is confusing since, like, normally soldiers would be given land, although they're not given the nobility. The fact that he was given land to till, well, it depends. Probably went back to the village to till the land for another night. Could be something like that. Soldiers of the army normally get paid quite well, so he should, after finishing his thing, he should be quite rich, actually. Finishing his service. Unless he got underpaid, then that's confusing. So, this is confusing bunch of ideas. So these banner guards being treated like dirt still fight, and it's confusing. My father didn't really respond to Marcel at the time. He was still angry at the king for discarding them. So they are angry at the king. This is confusing. All he wanted was to till the land and store up some more food, but the Wheelish army was already here, and the king's army was slow on the move. Many cities and their people were left to fend for themselves the best they could. Could it be I have heard? Never mind. Do continue. Uncle Marcel wanted to create a squadron himself to help the civilians stand against the invaders. You know, much like a militia, many cities were doing the same thing. After all, without the king's support, they had to do something. My father and Marcel were old veterans, and they knew plenty of other retired soldiers too, so your father agreed, not at first. He refused plenty of times. He was furious. Why was it that it was only in times of war that people like he was remembered, and and when they were, and when they were thrown straight into, and when they were thrown straight into danger, and after victory was had, some noble or another would swoop in to claim the accolades. Nepotism. But Marcel persuaded him in the end. We don't need the king to verify our honor because honor is earned. Our honor is our homeland and the people that live upon it. Well, he did have a point. He had my father persuaded. They created a squadron at the uh, Tutasis River. The big river to the west of here. The people came with equipment and payment, among which was this banner. My father was indecisive at first, but it did. After all, belonged to Balonostra. They called themselves the Battleguards. Wow. They started striking back along the river. In all honesty, it didn't go all that well at first. The Wheelish all rode trained war horses, and, well, the Battleguards were all seasoned veterans long past their prime. Fortunately, they won in spirit. They grew in size with each charge. Thinking back, it seems more than a little ridiculous. Wait, were you there fighting with your father? Not at all. I'm just retelling your story. I've heard it many times and it always gets my blood boiling. Right. Haven't your father ever told you his story? No, I've never. Hey, that's none of your business. Hurry up. Hurry on up. Yeah, actually, their most interesting battle was the one at Aurelica. Okay, so we're going back to Aurelica now. That's, so the Tetutis River runs through Aurelica, so the Battleguards must have moved up the river or down the river towards Aurelica to fight a decisive battle against Wheelish. So the Wheelish were probably trying to cross the river at other sections, but again, um, it would be too caught. It's actually really difficult to cross a river. It's actually really difficult to cross a river, even if there's shallow passings. Um, your equipment and stuff gets wet, and once that happens, like if you get caught by the enemy, so these Battleguards fighting across the river, makes bit of back and forth. It's just like trained war horses. Mm, yeah, yeah, just weird. Yeah, actually, the most interesting battle was the one at Aurelica. They had grown in size by then after taking part in plenty of battles, like the defense of Command, the assault on the Tetutis River, among some. But never did they think they would get the chance to fight alongside the Maiden. The Holy Maiden. The Holy Maiden? One and the same. Wonderful, right? I would probably faint of excitement if I got the chance to see her, but the Wheelish forces kept up the pressure with their bombards and catapults. Everyone's minds were at the breaking point, and they didn't really have time to think about anything else. The battle started soon after. The maiden led the cavalry at the spearhead. My father and Marcel led the Battleguards from the rear, but they soon tasted the Wheelish longbow arrows. Their volleys blotted the sun. Many died without ever seeing the longbowmen in the first place. They can't have charged into that, can they? No, the first counterattack was a failure. Was was a failure. Luckily, the Battleguards were made up of veteran soldiers, and they didn't suffer heavy losses. But the cavalry wasn't so lucky. They charged too quickly, and many fell to the archers. Then the Wheelish went to work on the walls of Relica, and with their cannons. Ah, on the walls with the Relica with their cannons. So how did they end up winning? Marcel and my father realized that the longbow were a great danger to the cavalry, that they prevented Valos's forces from exerting any pressure. So they thought that if they stood up the vanguard and advanced slowly but surely, the cavalry could swoop in and take them unawares. The arrogant knights didn't agree at first, but the Holy Maiden persuaded them, so the Battleguards took up the front. During the second skirmish, they held high their iris banner and blocked the arrows with their shield. Then the Holy Maiden came charging with the cavalry. It didn't take them long to crush the longbowmen. Ha! The victory fully belong. The victory fully belongs to the Battleguards. Although it fully belonged to the Battleguards, and the Battleguards were basically bait during then, the Knights would have taken the glory. Yeah, no, I'm up to 3 now. It's also good to note that, um, it's also good to note that what we see in the trailer implies that they had to cross a bridge. They're getting shot at. There's only one direction, so it's just like the Battleguards were blocking the arrows from the front, so they can get close. As they get closer, the knights from the rear charge forward. So they would break their own lines. So the Battleguards basically got trampled by their own men. It's a narrow bridge. Oh, I mean, it's a pretty big bridge, but it's pretty narrow in the whole scheme of things. Battleguard 3. Bernard finished his story. He laid there on the makeshift bed of hay. He was satisfied. He looked at the youngster beside him. You have heard my story. It is time I hold up my end of the bargain. He rose with difficulty and lifted a pile of hay. From within it, he picked out a paper package, which he gave to the youngster. The young man took it and extracted a piece of bread, which he gulped down with haste. "So, will you tell me your story?" Bernard asked. Bernard, um, no. Benoit? Benoit? Benoit. Body stiffened, and he shook his head. "I don't have any real story to tell, if you say so." Bernard shrugged and laid down on the hay again. "Anyway, what happened with the Battleguards?" Benoit asked, changing the topic. "Disbanded. With the war won, they had finished what they had set out to do. None of them wanted anything to do with the military." Bernard shrank into a lump and said in a somewhat sadder tone, "Do you still remember them, the warriors that faced our enemies and won? Why?" Benoit inquired. "Velios needs a vast army that tells of the king's heroism, not some ragtag band of warriors formed in some no-name townlet." Bernard said those were my father's words. "Right. Can I ask you anything?" Bernard suddenly thought of something and he turned to Bernard. "Can you share my story with others?" "What do you mean?" "Well, retell my story to others, people in cities, farmers in the countryside, those who will listen." A glimmer of hope sparkled in Bernard's eye. "That way there will be those who remember what my father and Uncle Marcel did once I've passed away." "Passed away? Why would you pass away?" Benoit asked in surprise. "I'm not planning on killing you." Bernard smiled a strange smile as he removed his clothes, showing the wounds beneath. Pus-filled and infectious wounds ran across his body. "Not every bandit is willing to hear my story." Bernard sat quietly for a bit before he nodded solemnly. "That's wonderful. Go on and bring that banner." Could feel his own breath slowing down and his eyelids grew heavier and heavier. "Remember what you promised me." Darkness, endless darkness. Bernard saw his father in the Battle of Azzakye. He was wearing a set of armor and an iris banner in his hand. Uncle Marcel stood to one side with the Battleguards behind them. He was just like father had said, broad-faced with a great big beard and a huge body seemingly capable of withstanding hurricane. Uncle Marcel stood to one side with the Battleguard behind them. He was just like father had said, broad-faced with a great beard. This is implying Uncle Marcel, I guess. Capable of withstanding. Barnard found himself on the back of someone as he woke up. You're awake. What are... Turned his head to... Benoit turned his head to look and hoisted up Bernard even further. "What are..." Bernard was at a loss for what to say. "There aren't many good people around anymore." Bernard continued forward. Benoit continued forward. "But I believe I can trust the son of a hero of Balosis." As Bernard moved, he realized that his body was covered in bandages. Benoit had enveloped him in the banner, and they were walking on the path in the wilderness. "I'm no great medic, and I had to tear your last piece of cloth," Benoit said. "I'll find a doctor to look after you once we make it to the city. Hold on until then." Benoit propped him further up again. "You need to share your father's story with many more." Bernard could all but feel himself brimming with gratitude as he nodded. Benoit smiled and soldiered onwards towards the distant city. Aw, man! That's a really heartwarming story. Chevaliers! These well-equipped and well-trained noble knights served under the lords of the lands who were ultimately under the king's command. They were known to ride into command together with their retinue in flowing formations. Many wars ravaged the lands during the course of time, during which these knights contributed greatly to the Balosis kingdom's success. Alright, Chevaliers 1 to General Martel. You were right, you were right, Commander Martel. The Wheelish are preparing an ambush on the plains. I am sorry for my previous rudeness, but even so, my first impression of you hasn't changed. You are a coward of a man. Had you listened to my sincere recommendation and left via that seeming that makes that section of word makes no sense. Left via that seemingly safe area, the long woman. Oh, okay, no. If they left via, no, that makes sense actually. Oh, I'm just, I've just never seen it written like that. The long women wouldn't have time to act and attack us. You have to admit your imbecility, imbecility, imbecility has brought shame and disgrace upon the soldiers of Balios. Fortunately enough, might night that it was might knights who were deployed. Who, wow, who was might? Who were deployed this time around. We avoided the ambush and are searching for their tracks as we speak. I'm sure we'll catch up with the Longwomen before long. All you have to do is make your way here slowly and mop up the stragglers. May your battle bring you glory. Chevaliers, Captain uh, Aulus. That bloody bastard! Martel slammed his fist into the table. He finally unleashed his anger he had pent up during the day. Martel had prepared everything to perfection, at least until the Chevaliers joined the battle. But in a mere 2 days' time, those bastards had sliced through the line of defense as if it was made of butter. He couldn't for the life fathom why the king sent them into battle and why he had to command them. So far, they had more or less completely disregarded anyone that wasn't the king himself, meaning that the battle always turned to chaos where they fought. General Martel had been ambushed by Wheelish longwomen 3 hours ago atop a hill. He had ordered his soldiers to hide within a forest to keep his losses down, but before he knew it, the Chevaliers had charged straight towards the enemy and disappeared into the wild. Martel stared in disbelief while painting in fury. He had told their captain, Arlas? I'm gonna go with Arlas. Arlas? No, not R. Or. Orlus. Orlus? Gonna go with Orlus. Orlus of a possible ambush before they started marching. However, Orlus hadn't taken a single word to heart, but there was nothing for it. Wow, okay, so this is an apology letter. This is Chevaliers phrase, hadn't taken a single word to heart, but there was nothing for it. General Martel followed behind, praying that the bastards wouldn't all die in a single volley, and that's when he came upon this letter stuck on a tree. The arrogance of its contents had stroked his fury further. Let's ignore them and head back instead. Whoa! Martel shredded the letter into pieces, and he turned to his lieutenant in fury. This isn't on me. Those blasted blockheads had it coming. Calm down, General. The lieutenant took hold of his arm. Forsaking one's allies in battle is a terrible sin, but they obviously. Martel started, obviously still furious. The king won't care, the lieutenant said calmly. What if something really happened to the miscreants? The supervisors will be sure to add insult to injury. Damn it all, General Martel deflated in an instant. What should we do? Following behind them and pray that they're still alive? What should we do? Following behind them and pray that they're still alive. Yeah, nah, this is quite common. Lots of lots of tales of units of noblemen created, noblemen not listening to commanders. And pray tell, when you create knight orders literally just built up on just nobles, just rich nobles, it's very hard. This is why normally you would have the nobles lead retinues, so they would have to take care of their own troops. But this entire unit is just nobles, each one as arrogant as each other, and they're just like, let's just kill the enemy. We're nobles. We'll trample them with our war horses, armed and armored, in the best and the finest. That's the kind of arrogance where it's just like we don't care what happens. No, like they're not leading any, like, even like when they consider other, it does portray like their noble arrogance very well, and charging head first without rhyme, reason, or strategy is quite classic when you think about these nobles that are knights. I don't like to say noble knights as in the idea of chivalry, although um the code of chivalry was made to make sure these nobles weren't acting like assholes. But anyway, Chevaliers 2. To General Martel, I must say your army marches at a turtle's pace. We have caught up with the longbowmen and have made them pay in blood. While half of their forces fled, trust me, they'll be dead too before long. Frankly speaking, I detest archers. They never face you head on. Instead, they try to hide and ambush you. Did you know we lost but a few of our retinue in taking half of their forces? But even if they had come at us from the front, we would only have lost a few more of our retinue. Commander Martel, I hope you can learn from this and strive to be braver. I'm rooting for you, Chevaliers Captain. Or, Carlos. This letter was lying next to a pile of dead wheelish longwomen. Next to these lay the corpse of a few Chevaliers' retinue. General Martel rubbed his temple. Ordinarily, only someone capable of keeping their cool no matter the situation can become a general, but these arrogant Chevaliers sure made him want to flog them all. Don't they even care whether their own retinues lives? Care whether their own retinues lives? Wow, that's a line I've never thought I'd say. Whether their own retinues lives. Whether can't be replaced about. Like, don't they even care whether their own retinue lives or dies? Whether the Oh, okay. So wait, hang on. Not lives, lives. Fuck! Damn it, that was my fault. That sentence makes sense. I'm just reading it wrong. Martel spoke through gritted teeth. They all of noble blood, and the king commands them directly. Do you really think they care about their retinue? The lieutenant shook his head. I would wager they care as much for their retinue as for their horse. But there's nothing we can do about that. The lieutenant shrugged. They are indeed the mightiest knights in Valios, veterans who have fought many a battle. I will make them pay, General Martel said in fury. The lieutenant looked at him and shrugged. Well, that's not. Well, I mean, like, you could fight many battles and just be completely arrogant still, but that just seems weird. I would much prefer them if they implied that the Chevaliers were young and inexperienced. That way it wouldn't look so strange. As veterans of war, you'd think they'd be a little bit smarter. But then again, it's just like they can be veterans of war if what they're fighting is basically peasants. They haven't fought. What I'm saying is that if you imply that what the Chevaliers have, like, I'm saying what the Chevaliers have faced is not a real battle. That's all I'm saying. Like in this scenario, they're chasing down the enemy, so The enemy's fleeing in this case, so we'll see. I'm guessing this will be a recreate. I'm guessing this will be a recreation. Oh, not retelling, but like this will be an event similar to the Battle of Agincourt, where the English made a stand, against the chasing French army. So, Chevaliers 3. General Martel caught up with the Chevaliers at last. Orless, their captain, was sitting before a tree, wiping his blade with a piece of cloth. Their retinue was piling together a veritable mountain of Welsh longbow horsemen at a nearby hill. General Martel drew his blade and charged at Aurelius. Do you know how those that disregard orders are punished? Struck his blade into the ground, speaking each syllable clearly. Captain Orless didn't give him the satisfaction of an answer. Instead, he held up his clean, shiny blade to take it in all its splendor and smiled in satisfaction. I am talking to you. General Martel had a hard time keeping his emotions in check. He was holding back the impulse to cut him down then and there. This is uncalled for, General Martel. Orless threw Martel a contemptuous glance and continued in a slow, drawling voice. We have killed the enemy while you were turtling along behind a bystander. You disregard a direct order. What if they had a larger ambush in place up ahead? Martel tightened his grip on the blade. The thoughts of a coward, a knight strikes. A thought. The thoughts of a coward. A knight strikes with force and does not cower like a turtle, Orless said. Then, as a knight, care you not whether your retinue lives or die? General Martel suppresses his fury and asks. Unnecessary sacrifice, Orless said in a dull voice. Unnecessary sacrifice. That's probably what he said. That's how he said it. As if talking of the weather, General Martel lost his temper and pounced forward, striking at Orless' face. Orless fell backwards, and the two nearby Chevaliers drew their blades. Martel's subordinates made themselves ready to fight, their blades pointing towards the Chevaliers. But Orless stopped them with a gesture. Bah! Once a coward, always a coward. He wiped the blood out of his mouth and sneered at General Martel. Mere tricks of a yokel. I'll have your head, was about to strike when his lieutenant wrestled him still. Let's go. Orless mounted his horse and trotted away before Martel's gaze. Wish you best of luck, General Martel. The other Chevaliers fell in behind and rode off. Why did you stop me? General Martel wrestled him free of the lieutenant's grasp and roared. Because you've lost it, General, the lieutenant stated. Martel sank down to the ground. You are right. I honestly can't stand people like them, who don't care whether their subordinate lives. That is why we follow you. The lieutenant sat down beside Martel. Martel was taken aback. We cannot deny that they are strong, nor can we deny their success, the lieutenant said, but remember, battles are messy, prone to chaos. The lieutenant patted Martel's shoulders. Arrogance is lethal in battle. You did well, and we know so. Martel was silent for a long while, and then he laughed. He rose up, gazed in the direction where Alice and Chevaliers had disappeared. Wish you luck too, he thought. Okay, so it didn't end up like I thought it would. Oh man. I think I definitely like the Battleguards. I definitely like the Alchemist story. They're quite enjoyable reads. The Chevaliers, not so much. Pretty funny, the interaction between the two. But all in all, this season's every season 4 very cool to read. I do hope that you guys have a chance to read it for yourselves or listen to me or enjoyed this lore reading. But I think that is all for this time. Other than that, my name's Azzakye, and I hope you guys have a nice day. Bye for now.